You ain't nothing but a hound.
What if I told you that America's most iconic music, rock and roll, blues, jazz, was created by black artists who died broke while white performers became millionaires? What if I told you that Elvis Presley made over $1 million from Hound Dog, while Big Mama Thornton, who wrote and first recorded it, got paid $500 total and never saw another dime? This is the story they don't want you to know. How black people turned pain into power. How they took the scraps of freedom they had in churches and juke joints and transformed them into sounds so incredible that the whole world can't stop listening today. But here's what really gets me fired up. For over 4 decades, white America systematically stole the genius of black artists, repackaged their innovations, and built billion-dollar empires while the original creators died in poverty. They've spent generations profiting off these stolen sounds while pretending they just magically appeared from white performers. Well, today, we're setting the record straight. This isn't just about music theft. This is about exposing the racist machine that turned black excellence into white wealth and giving flowers to the forgotten legends who actually built America's musical foundation. So buckle up, because we're about to drop some truth about the greatest cultural heist in history, and it's been silenced for way too long. Picture this. It's 1956, and Elvis Presley just made over $1 million from a song called Hound Dog. The world is calling him the king of rock and roll. Screaming fans, sold-out concerts, more money than most people see in a lifetime. But a black woman named Willie Mae Big Mama Thornton wrote and first recorded that song. She poured her soul into it, dominated the R&B charts for 14 straight weeks. Her payment? $500 total. She never saw another dime, while Elvis built an empire on her work. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was the blueprint for the greatest cultural heist in American history. We need to investigate exactly how this theft machine operated, because what I'm about to show you will prove this wasn't accidental cultural borrowing. It was organized crime on an industrial scale. By the way, if you're enjoying the content so far and want to see more untold black stories, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We need each and every one of you to help spread the message. Now, back to the video. Record labels operated like organized crime syndicates, but with 3-piece suits and legal contracts. Major labels like RCA, Columbia, and Capitol didn't just stumble into cultural appropriation. They industrialized it. Teams of scouts monitored black radio stations around the clock, armed with recording equipment and direct phone lines to A&R departments. The moment a black artist started climbing the R&B charts, these vultures would swoop in with their perfected 3-step process. Scout identifies hot black song climbing charts. Label immediately calls their stable of clean-cut white artists. Use the same arrangers, same session musicians, sometimes even the same recording studios where the original was made. Rush release the sanitized version and flood white radio stations, while the original gets buried in segregated markets. The economics were deliberately rigged. Black artists on independent labels had limited distribution networks. White artists on major labels had national reach, unlimited promotional budgets, and direct relationships with white radio programmers who controlled mainstream airplay. The deck was stacked from day one. The financial devastation was staggering and deliberate. Little Richard's groundbreaking original reached #2 on R&B charts, but Pat Boone's lifeless copy climbed higher on pop charts, reaching massive white audiences who never knew the original existed. The El Dorado's heartfelt ballad got overshadowed by Boone's mechanical version that radio programmers deemed safer for white ears. White radio programmers became willing accomplices in this theft. They claimed they couldn't play original black versions because white audiences wouldn't relate to them. But then they'd spin watered-down white copies all day long, proving the music was always acceptable, just not when it came from black voices. Meanwhile, record executives perfected legal robbery through contracts specifically designed to trap black artists in permanent poverty. The publishing scam was particularly vicious. Labels would claim ownership of songs through technical fine print, then collect royalties while artists got nothing. Studio costs would mysteriously balloon beyond any reasonable expense. Distribution fees would eat up entire advances. Let me introduce you to the biggest cultural vulture of them all, Pat Boone, who turned this system into a personal $1 million empire. Pat Boone became the undisputed king of this theft operation, turning cultural appropriation into a million-dollar assembly line. Between 1955 and 1956, he scored 6 consecutive million-selling singles, every single one stolen from a black artist. He grabbed Little Richard's sexually revolutionary work and sanitized it for white church-going audiences. Fats Domino's soulful ballads got the same treatment, identical arrangements stripped of all their heart and soul. But Boone's theft went deeper than anyone realized. He covered the El Dorados, Laverne Baker, Ivory Joe Hunter, and the Five Keys. Entire black artists' careers got derailed because their own songs were outselling them in whitened versions. The Charms had a massive hit with their original, then watched helplessly as Boone's cover climbed higher on the pop charts and stole their mainstream breakthrough moment. Ruth Brown's story exemplifies this systematic theft. Her hits were so massive that industry insiders called Atlantic Records the house that Ruth built. 21 top 10 hits basically funded the entire label's expansion. But when her popularity necessarily declined after years of success, Atlantic's accounting department suddenly discovered she owed them $30,000 in accumulated costs, studio time, promotional expenses, and mysterious fees that had never been mentioned during her peak earning years. The woman who built their empire was forced to work as a maid and bus driver to survive, while white Atlantic executives bought mansions in the suburbs with money her talent generated. This wasn't accidental bookkeeping. It was systematic financial terrorism designed to ensure black artists never accumulated enough wealth to gain independence or bargaining power. But while these thieves were getting rich and famous, the real pioneers who actually created these genres remained unknown, their revolutionary innovations stolen, and their names erased from history. Let me tell you about the woman who actually invented rock and roll, Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Sister Rosetta Tharpe didn't just influence rock and roll, she invented it wholesale in the 1930s and 40s. This brilliant queer black woman from Arkansas was performing what we now call rock and roll a full decade before anyone had even coined the term. She was the first person to use electric guitar with intentional distortion, turning what others saw as equipment malfunction into artistic innovation. Her guitar solos were revolutionary, complex melodic passages that became the blueprint every rock guitarist would follow. But Tharpe's innovations went far beyond technical skills. She pioneered the crossover between sacred and secular music, mixing gospel with blues and jazz in ways that scandalized church communities but electrified audiences. Her stage presence was magnetic. She played guitar behind her back with her teeth while singing with a voice that could shake buildings. Chuck Berry, often called the father of rock and roll, admitted his entire career was one long Sister Rosetta Tharpe impersonation. But even today, the institutions that should honor her continue the erasure. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opened in 1986. Elvis got inducted in the first class for supposedly inventing a genre that Tharpe had already perfected 20 years earlier. Sister Rosetta Tharpe had to wait until 2018, 32 years later, for recognition of inventing the entire musical form. Let me show you the devastating human cost of this theft through the story of the man who literally started rock and roll. Arthur Big Boy Crudup recorded his masterpiece in 1946, 8 full years before Elvis Presley became famous. That song was called That's All Right, and music historians now recognize it as the first true rock and roll record ever made. Crudup literally started rock and roll, creating the template that everyone who followed would copy. His guitar style, his vocal delivery, his rhythm section arrangements, they became the foundation of an entire genre. Elvis Presley built his early career covering Crudup songs, and to his credit, he never hid his influences. Elvis openly admitted, "Down in Tupelo, I used to hear old Arthur Crudup bang his box the way I do now, and I said if I ever got to the place I could feel all old Arthur felt, I'd be a music man like nobody ever saw." But acknowledgement doesn't pay bills or build legacies. Crudup fought for royalties his entire life, and reportedly never received a single dime from the song that launched rock and roll as a commercial genre. He died poor and forgotten, while Elvis became the highest paid entertainer in the world. T-Bone Walker revolutionized electric blues guitar around 1940, developing techniques that became synonymous with rock and roll showmanship. He was the first to play guitar behind his back, with his teeth, while doing splits and other acrobatic moves. B.B. King, himself a legend, acknowledged, "My biggest musical debt is to T-Bone. I remain his disciple today." But when Chuck Berry and later Jimi Hendrix used these same techniques, they got credit as innovative performers, while Walker remained largely unknown outside blues circles. But none of this theft could have happened without an entire media infrastructure designed to promote white faces while systematically excluding black creators. We need to understand how television, radio, and the music industry work together to make this cultural heist possible. Television and radio operated under coordinated apartheid policies. American Bandstand, supposedly the show that brought rock and roll to America, systematically excluded black teenagers. The Philadelphia Tribune published 7 editorials documenting how staff were instructed to screen all applicants by their last names. Less chance of picking Negroes that way. Commercial radio employed 0 black broadcasters for mainstream audiences until 1969. Black artists were confined to low-wattage stations, while white stations claimed audiences didn't like black music, then played sanitized white versions constantly. The Grammy Awards institutionalized exclusion through category segregation and voting bias. In 66 years, only 11 black artists have won Album of the Year. From 2012 to 2020, black artists received just 26.7% of nominations, despite representing over 38% of Billboard Hot 100 artists. The last black winner, Herbie Hancock in 2008, for covering Joni Mitchell songs. But not everyone went quietly. Some heroes fought back against this theft machine, and their courage opened doors for justice. Laverne Baker launched the first major legal counterattack in 1954. When Georgia Gibbs recorded a note-for-note copy of Tweedledee that hit #1, while Baker's original peaked at 14, Baker sued for $250,000. Her brilliant psychological warfare? Taking out a life insurance policy, naming Gibbs as beneficiary, declaring, "Annoyed. If anything happens to me, you're out of business." Though she lost the lawsuit, Baker petitioned Congress to make note-for-note copying illegal. Her fight triggered federal investigations of industry theft practices and changed the legal landscape for future artists. Ruth Brown's decades-long battle against Atlantic Records culminated in 1988 when she forced them to contribute $2 million to the Rhythm and Blues Foundation. Her victory exposed the systematic nature of the theft and set precedent for other artists seeking justice. But the theft didn't end in the 1960s. It continued today in different forms, and most people still don't know the real creators of American music. We have the power and responsibility to change this narrative by sharing these stories and ensuring the next generation knows the truth. This was cultural colonialism, systematic theft that extracted billions from black creativity while condemning creators to poverty and erasure. The pattern was always identical. Black artists created innovations, white performers copied them, copy-aggregated media promoted copies, history books forgot originals. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Big Mama Thornton, Arthur Crudup, Robert Johnson, Louis Jordan, Ruth Brown, Laverne Baker. These names should be household words. These legends built the foundation that all American popular music still rests on. Every guitar solo traces back to Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Rock and roll was born in black churches and juke joints. The blues came from Robert Johnson's musical language that everyone else just learned to speak. Share this video. Tell these stories. Make sure the next generation knows who really created the music that shaped the world.